Okay, you should be able to hear me now and see me, hopefully. Internet was being a little weird, but I reset the router. And, yeah, you didn't miss anything, Henry. um, Hi, everyone. Sorry about that. I was late getting set up, and then everything was being weird for a second, but I think we're good now. Um, the internet just, like, came back on, and then it decided to short out for a second there. Anyway, so I just, I had just come from being out of town and I got in and I was like unpacking and stuff, and then I was like, it's stream time, and all the things happened all at once, but now I'm here. So I had been just like really excited all last week, all weekend to get back into this book, to get back into some antics. And even the politics, like the more that we read, the more I understand, the more excited I'm getting for just like what's happening. Oh, my trip was good. I was at my parents'. They're just like one state over. It's like an hour and a half drive away. But I go over on the weekends sometimes and I help them out with stuff. If you ever see me streaming or recording in like a different location than normal, it would be my parents' house. Um, but yeah, it was good. I hung out with their very, very hyper dog. Wolf, you said you were rewatching the last stream. They were describing Shenzi Chuan. All you could picture was Zhang Xin Chung. Oh, I have to think about that, but I can kind of see it. The I know there's blue streaks on my lenses and they're really bad, and I don't really know what to do with it, what to do about it. I have blue light blocking, and whatever I do with the light, if I have a ring light on or if I don't have it on, which it's not even on right now, but the light will just always reflect on my glasses and make like really mad streaks. I guess if I turn my head a certain way, it goes away. Um Jung Shin Chung is the actor for Pei Su or Fei Du in Injustice in the Dark. Hi, Cookie. Oh, blue. Yeah, no, it's just sometimes it is extra bad, just the angle that my camera is or something, but these glasses are just very it's I don't know how people with glasses do a ring light, and the blue light blocking thing makes it worse with like any light at all. But it's also helpful, so yeah. You wouldn't want me to try and read with my glasses off because my vision isn't that bad, but I just kind of like get a headache. Like I don't notice it, and then I'm like, wait a minute, I need my glasses. Oh God. Um, so I'm gonna get into it since we're a little bit late starting. We are on page 213 for chapter 21, which is called Autumn Hunt. In the first days of the rainy 10th month in Chudu, the maple leaves on Mount Feng turned red. When Shen Zichuan herded the elephants to court in the morning, he noticed the thin layer of autumn frost covering the ground. Surprisingly, the Xiande Emperor's illness improved with the change of season. Rumor had it that he had resumed regular meals, and his coughing during morning court had eased greatly. Traditionally, the Emperor hosted a hunt at the Nanlin hunting grounds in the 11th month. But despite the Xiande Emperor's improving health, he seemed worried that traveling in colder weather would be too taxing. Thus, he had given orders to prepare for the autumn hunt at the start of the 10th month. Chen Yang waited at the edge of the drill grounds, holding Xiao Chuye's blade. The 8 great battalions and the embroidered uniform guard are still responsible for patrol duty. But didn't His Majesty fly into a rage when they patrolled the Duanwu celebration last time? That was last time. Xiao Chuye wiped sweat from his face. Last time, His Majesty was furious because he felt threatened from all sides. It's different now. Xi Guan has been shunned by Her Majesty for 2 months. By this point, he'll be desperate to put himself back on the board. Does the Emperor believe such small favors will move Shi Guan? Chen Yang glanced around for eavesdroppers before continuing. The Empress Dowager has been accumulating power for a long time, and His Majesty is ill. Even if the Emperor's willing to hand Shi Guan an olive branch, would Shi Guan dare accept it? You said it yourself. These are small favors. Xiao Qiye grabbed an outer robe and slipped it on. But what if His Majesty handed Shi Guan immense power and authority? A few days ago, he asked the age of the Shi clan's daughter. Prince Chu has yet to take a princess consort. If the Emperor really bestowed a marriage on them, even if Shi Guan hadn't intended it, Her Majesty would see it very differently. A shame we don't have a young miss of our own at home, Chen Yang sighed. We're better off without, Xiao Chuye said. If I had a sister, she would have to be like Marshal Qi. Otherwise, she would have no control over her life. She, too, would most likely be forced to marry some husband she'd never met. Xiao Chuye slowed his pace. Actually, the Hua clan has always been the first choice for imperial consorts. Hua Xiangyi, who's been raised and nurtured by the Empress Dowager, has yet to marry. Even His Majesty won't presume to make arrangements for her. He still addresses her as his own younger sister. When it comes to her future, the throne will bow to the Empress Dowager's wishes. Fortunately, our heir is already married, Chen Yang said. But to whom can Third Lady Hua possibly be betrothed? I really can't guess. The Qi clan is the best choice, Xiao Qiye smiled. If Qi Juyin were born a man, the Empress Dowager would have sent Third Lady Hua to wed her long ago. What a pity for them that Qi Juyin is a woman, and the Hua clan doesn't have a son of lawful birth in this generation. They can eye that choice cut of meat, but they can't touch it. They're getting anxious. Blue, bare minimum, but close enough. Yeah. Bare minimum is a lot in ancient China. You are correct, Henry. Like, Xiao Qiye is kind of showing a level of like, empathy and understanding here. That's interesting. Xiao Qiye's horse was led over, and he stroked its nose. Come on, let's go to Donglong Street, the East Market. Blue, I have a solution for that. Lesbianism. Yep. Shen Zichuan had only just stepped onto Donglong Street with Ge Qingqing. Ooh, are they going to meet up again? Since he had been officially released from imprisonment, he obviously had to leave the Temple of Guilt. At first, this matter had been set aside, but in the 8th month, Chao Tianya had taken notice and followed him back to the temple. When he saw Grand Mentor Qi covered in mud and acting like a lunatic, he insisted Shen Zichuan get an advance on his salary from the embroidered uniform guard so he could find proper accommodations. Thus, at the end of the 9th month, Shen Zichuan moved to an old alley house. The rent was cheap, and the place was suitable for his current status. Who exactly is this person Shifu wants me to find? Shen Zichuan picked up the deed of indenture and read the name there, Song Yue. Where the place of origin should have been recorded above, the deed was blank. Ge Qingqing looked around at the crowd. He didn't tell me either. He just said Xiansheng suggested you let this person take care of your day-to-day needs in the future. Since moving out of the temple, communication with Grand Mentor Qi had become difficult. Shen Zichuan was unwilling to keep messenger pigeons. First of all, they were too easy to intercept. And second, the sight of Xiao Chuye's gerfalcon disemboweling a sparrow had left a deep impression on him. For now, They were forced to rely on Ji Gong as a go-between and meet up whenever he came out to make purchases as a footman. It was less than convenient, but they had few better options at present. Henry, this could have been a sitcom. This Song Yue should be in the East Market, Shen Zichuan said. Let's go have a look. Donglong Street ran along the Kailing River. The area was a pleasure district, and there was a market on the eastern side that mostly dealt in human chattel. Young people whose parents had died without money knelt here to sell themselves into servitude for burial expenses. And common households all came to this market to pick their attendants and maids. Xiao Chuye, a register of names in hand, had come to the market to investigate the origins of some of the staff at Prince Chu's manor. He strode out of the brokers and caught sight of a familiar nape. Not a nape. Isn't that... Chen Yang trailed off. Xiao Chuye raised a hand. Chen Yang fell silent. Shen Zichuan had just tucked the deed of indenture away when he felt a chill on the back of his neck. Glancing over his shoulder, he saw Xiao Chuye behind him. Oh, what an honor, Shen Zichuan said. What are you doing lurking back there? Looking at you, of course. Xiao Chuye casually stashed the register of names away and strolled to Shen Zichuan's side. Are you here to buy servants? I'm selling myself, Shen Zichuan answered dryly. How on earth could I afford to buy someone else? Already reduced to that, huh? Xiao Chuye sized him up. I seem to have heard that many people are seeking you at high prices. In those cases, sentiment is involved. Shen Zichuan kept walking. They have to catch my eye before I decide whether or not to accept an offer. Xiao Chuye had an inkling of what kind of men were making offers. It can't be easy choosing between cracked dates and misshapen pears. I'm sure our Gongzi wouldn't know. Shen Zichuan looked at him sidelong. You must eat well at Prince Chu's side. Envious? Come with me. Shen Zichuan smiled. I'm not so desperate yet. When they reached the end of the street, Shen Zichuan turned aside. I won't trouble our Gongzi to accompany me further. I'll be going now. No hurry. Xiao Chuye remained where he was. We still have to look out for each other during this year's autumn hunt. How would I look out for you? Shen Zichuan met his eyes. The embroidered uniform guard and the Imperial Army have no common ground. You hold me at such a distance, Xiao Chuye said. If I visit you often to stretch my legs, perhaps we can find some. Shen Zichuan made no reply. After they left, Xiao Chuye stood rooted to the spot. Who is he looking for around here? Xiao Chuye thumbed the hilt of his blade. Ge Qing Qing again. Of course, it's Ge Qing Qing. Chen Yang. Sir. Look into him, Xiao Chuye said. I want a thorough check on Ge Qing Qing's background. Henry. Yeah. Shen Zichuan's search for Song Yue had been derailed by Xiao Chuye, and he'd been placed on consecutive rotational duties ever since. As a result, he hadn't managed to find any more free time to seek out Qi Huilian's mysterious contact. On the eve of the autumn hunt, his turn finally came to receive a special assignment. Sure enough, he was to accompany the Emperor to the Nanlin hunting grounds. That night, when Shen Zichuan returned home from his shift, he sensed the presence of someone else in the house. Feng Chuan's voice floated out from within. Aren't you coming in? Shen Zichuan pushed the door open. There was no light in the house, and with a cloak draped over him so his snow-white face was immersed in darkness, Feng Chuan looked like a wandering ghost. He took a last sip of tea, his finger sticking up delicately, then set the cup aside. I've come to convey a message from Her Majesty. Shen Zichuan tossed his dirty outer robe onto a small clothing rack. Sorry to have troubled you. Yes. Feng Chuan looked at Shen Zichuan maliciously. It's quite important, or I wouldn't have needed to come in person. You've been graced with so many favors from the Empress Dowager. It's time to repay your debts. He tossed him an object. If this doesn't go smoothly at the autumn hunt, it won't go smoothly for you after. Shen Zichuan caught it. The little object was an eastern pearl wrapped in a strip of cloth. A swipe of his fingertip revealed the traces of half a character on the strip of cloth. Lin. It was the same character that made up the top half of Chu. And there's a footnote. Lin, meaning woods or forest, is the same name as the Lin in non-Lin hunting grounds. The character is also a radical in the character Chu, in Prince Chu. Shen Zichuan's gaze swung back to Feng Chuan's face. Feng Chuan stood and approached him. If you succeed, the Empress Dowager will continue treating you as her obedient dog. If you fail, there's no point keeping you. Formidable masters abound, Shen Zichuan said. I'll try my best. Oh yeah, like Lin from Chu? Like Aunt Lin? Oh dear, yeah. We'll try not to think about that. Feng Chuan stared daggers at him for a moment, then smirked. He strode out the door, lifted his hood, and melted into the black of the night. Shen Zichuan lit a candle and stood beside the table as he burned the strip of cloth. In his hand, the flame licked the fabric, turning that Lin to ash. The non-Lin hunting grounds were southeast of Chudu and encompassed a wide area. Half the game supplied to the court of imperial entertainments was hunted here. On the day of the hunt, the 8 great battalions mobilized a full 50% of its forces to accompany the emperor in a grand procession. Shen Zichuan was traveling with the elephants. When he heard the thunder of hooves rise behind him, he didn't have to turn to know who approached. Sure enough, in the next moment, the ger-falcon swooped over his head and snatched a wild rat from the grass before soaring back into the sky. Xiao Chuye and Li Jianheng, at the center of a group of rich young masters from Chudu, rode rowdily past and dashed ahead. The jet-black steed with the snowy patch on its chest was impossible to miss. Xiao Wu looked toward the sky with some envy. Supreme Commander Xiao's falcon and horse are both treasures beyond compare. Wild things, Shen Zichuan said. Xiao Wu was young and sociable, so he was always eager to make small talk with Shen Zichuan. Sitting astride his horse, he munched on dry sweet potatoes and said in a Huaizhou accent, Do you know what the horse and falcon are called, Chuange? Shen Zichuan smiled. They're wild creatures, so there's only so much they can be called. Stretching his hands wide, excitement spread over Xiao Wu's face. Well, that falcon is called Meng. It means fierce. Isn't it a perfect fit? But the horse's name isn't fierce at all. It's called Snowcrest. He savored each syllable, his wonder so childlike that men around him smiled. Stopping to catch his breath, Li Jianheng looked back at Xiao Chuye. I swear, I swear, every time I see him, I think, why wasn't he born a woman? And just to point out, there is a question mark and an explanation mark after that. Exclamation mark. Uh, Xiao Chuye turned his horse to look at Li Jianheng. I know, Li Jianheng said hastily. I'm not that befuddled. When we arrive later, Xiao Chuye warned him, tell me before you venture out. Don't go anywhere without your guards, and none of the women you brought are allowed in the tent. I didn't bring any women, Li Jianheng said boldly. Xiao Chuye scoffed, his expression wicked. Chen Yang overtook them from behind and said, Supreme Commander, I got someone to send all those women back. Li Jianheng, thwarted, bit the tip of his tongue. Tse-an, honestly, if I can't even sleep with a pretty girl, what's there to do at the autumn hunt? Plenty, Xiao Chuye said. Even staring at the sky is more interesting than being cooped up in the tent. Li Jianheng sighed again and rode on, listless and dejected, all his earlier high spirits drying up in the sun. Girl hunt. Right, exactly. Blue, heterosexuality is a curse cast upon Li Jianheng specifically. By the time they arrived, it was dusk. Chen Zichuan wasn't on duty the first day, so he stayed with the caravan to help with odd jobs. Chao Tianya had also come with the group. When they finished, he called their fellow guardsmen over to eat. You can hold your drink, huh? He said, spying the bowl in Shen Zichuan's hand. No more than a bowl, Shen Zichuan replied. Chao Tianya didn't expose him. This man didn't look like an embroidered uniform guard, but more like a free spirit, traveling from place to place at will. Chao Tianya produced a dagger to slice the freshly roasted game and said, Eat up. You're at the hunting ground. This happens only once a year. What you are eating now are things usually sent into the palace, so seize the opportunity while you can. Chewing on the meat, he continued, You need to be armed while you're on duty. You can use Ching Ching's blade during your shift tomorrow night. Why didn't you bring one? Didn't the elephant training office teach you any moves? Weapons are too heavy, Shen Zichuan replied, looking as though he couldn't lift a thing. It's too much to carry with me all the time. This body of yours, Chao Tianya said, couldn't have been broken by that kick Xiao'er gave you, could it? What a pity. That's a first-grade hoodlum if ever there was one, and we can't extort him either. Otherwise, as your good brother, I'd fleece him out of his whole family fortune in revenge for that kick. The embroidered uniform guard around them burst into laughter. Shen Zichuan's lips curled in a smile over the rim of the bowl. All these men were inseparable from their blades. Other than himself, who else was here to kill Prince Chu? So, is that what the Empress Dowager asked him to do? Kill Prince Chu? Oh no! Hello? Can you see me? What's happening? Oh no. Yeah. Shoot. Hello? Am I back? I'm not back? Can y'all see anything now? I know it's lagging, but I'm just wondering if you can hear or anything. I'm gonna try and deal with this. I might have to restart the stream. I don't know why it's doing that. I thought my internet was okay. Okay, I will be right back. There might be a new stream link. I'm not sure. Hi, hello. Am I back? I'm trying to do a thing to keep it from kicking me off and making me start another stream. I'm actually on my hotspot from my phone right now, but you need to tell me if it's really laggy or not, because I don't think that's a very good connection. But if my internet is going to be doing this, I might just have to use the hotspot. Um, but if you can... The video is still a bit laggy. You can... yeah. I see there might be an issue with that. My internet might be... Like, my regular internet might be back in a second, and then I would just switch to that. I'm sorry. I'm gonna have to, yell at my internet and, like, upgrade it sometime soon. It's not too bad. Oh no, I see the loading bar. It's doing something. I'm just gonna see really quick if my internet came back. Uh... Why does it say no data? Okay. We're back again. Yeah, if I have to do this next time, I guess it's what I'll do. Like, switch to mobile data so I don't lose the stream. Because otherwise, I don't know why it kicks me out of the stream so fast, and I haven't been able to figure out how to just let it accept no data for a second and then go back to it. So that's what I'll have to do if this happens again, but I'm going to be yelling at my internet people, and probably upgrading my service as much as I can. So, where the heck were we? We were on page 221. Okay. Qiao Tianya produced a dagger to slice the freshly roasted game and said, "Eat up. You're at the hunting ground. This happens only once a year. What you are eating now are things usually sent into the palace, so seize the opportunity while you can." Chewing on the meat, he continued, "You need to be armed while you're on duty. You can use..." Oh wait, I'm sorry. I went back a little... Is my connection being weird again? I love bunnies. It's kind of spinning for me, but I don't know if you're having a problem on your end. I started back a little bit too far. Where the heck was I? Alright, I'll just start here. "This body of yours," Qiao Tianya said, "couldn't have been broken by that kick Xiao R gave you, could it? What a pity. That's a first-grade hoodlum, if ever there was one, and we can't extort him either. Otherwise, as your good brother, I'd fleece him out of his whole family fortune in revenge for that kick." The embroidered uniform guard around them burst into laughter. Shen Zichuan's lips curled in a smile. Between sips of his wine, he snuck a look over at the rim of the bowl. All these men were inseparable from their blades. Other than himself, who else was here to kill Prince Chu? And I remember now. That's where I said, hey, wait a minute. Does the Empress Dowager want him to kill Prince Chu? And then, all this mess happened. Apart from those present, there were undoubtedly assassins unseen in the shadows. How many were quietly lying in wait? Even if Xiao Chuye was a prodigy, could he really preserve Prince Chu's life under such heavy siege? Across the camp, Xiao Chuye and Li Jianheng were drinking wine and playing dice, heedless of what waited in the dark. And that's the end of the chapter. Bye, bunnies. Okay, I'm glad our signal is maybe being agreeable now. I didn't realize we were going into a Prince Chu attempted assassination arc, but here we are. We are on page 223 for chapter 22, which is called Thunder. The next morning, the Xianda Emperor assumed personal command of the autumn hunt. His health didn't permit him to hunt on horseback, so he prepared some rewards and told the young men around him to vie for their prize on the hunting grounds. Li Jianheng made several attempts to mount his horse before gracelessly hoisting himself into the saddle. The emperor gave him a sharp look. Jianheng, you must lead by example. We await a demonstration of your skills. The prince gripped his reins. He had already given instructions to his guards. Even if he didn't hit the mark himself, he would certainly not return empty-handed. He set out in high spirits, his guardsmen following close, and Xiao Chuye at his side. A stretch of forest lay at the end of a vast expanse of grassland within the Nanlin hunting grounds. Morning dew hung on yellowed branches, and freshly released game of all sizes scattered through the undergrowth, startled by shouts and the pounding of hooves. Brandishing his bow from his seat astride his horse, Li Jianheng drew with considerable effort and fired on a hare. The arrow sank feebly into the ground some distance away from his quarry. Blind applause and cheers immediately rang out around him as the guard, who went forward to take a look, brought back a dead hare, prepared in advance. Satisfied, Li Jianheng turned to Xiao Chuye. My skill with the bow is not bad, right? My imperial grandfather taught me back in the day. Never have I seen such a display of archery prowess, even in Li Bei, Xiao Chuye said sincerely. Li Jianheng laughed. You've been in Chudu so long, you haven't forgotten how to draw a bow, have you? Xiao Chuye had brought an ordinary bow. The draw weight couldn't match even the ones issued to the embroidered uniform guard. Let me show you my skill too, he said. Xiao Chuye drew back on the bowstring and loosed an arrow into the clearing before them. His shot was weaker than Prince Chu's. The arrow didn't even stick in the dirt. Another round of sycophantic cheers and exultation rang out from the watchers, and Xiao Chuye grinned smugly. Qiao Tianya had grown impatient waiting behind them, but this scene amused him. See that? If you neglect your training, you'll be treated like a fool. Looking at Xiao Chuye's shoulders and arms, Shen Zichuan was once again reminded of that bone thumb ring. He couldn't help but smile. Prince Chu hadn't been riding long when his legs started to ache, significantly dampening his enthusiasm. He had overdone the drink last night and was feeling poorly all over. He allowed his horse to wander aimlessly through the wood, enduring his discomfort, then urged his men back the moment it was time to return. The guards at the back of his entourage had hardly exhausted the arrows in a single quiver before they were escorting him back. They'd never even made it as far as the eastern woods. And that was on purpose? Back at camp, Li Jianheng dismounted and knelt before the emperor. Pan Rugui, standing beside the throne, made an inventory of his kills as the emperor waited. The longer Li Jianheng listened, the more pleased he became. There's even a red fox, imperial brother, It has an excellent pelt that'll make the perfect fur collar for you. The Emperor was equally pleased. You certainly seem more spirited now than back in the capital. Panru Gui, reward Prince Chu. Li Jianheng lifted the silk cover on the tray with delight, only to see, lying beneath, a great iron bow. No ordinary man could draw a thing like that. He instantly lost interest, although he still dutifully said, "Thank you for the reward, Your Majesty." The Emperor laughed until he coughed. You don't like it? Don't worry, it's not meant to be used. This bow was left behind by our great founding emperor in the early years of our clan. Legend has it that it's forged of black iron and dragon tendons. It weighs a grand 120 caddies. Even among the current 4 great generals, none can draw it. I bestow it upon you now as a reminder. Be always diligent. When you see this bow, remember the hardships faced by the great founding emperor and his monumental undertaking to establish our great Zhou. Li Jianheng solemnly acknowledged his words and called for his men to carry the bow away. Over dinner, the emperor called for Li Jianheng to sit at his side. The signal of favor couldn't have been more obvious. Every official in attendance recognized it, but played dumb. After all, Secretariat Elder Hua Siqian was still on equal footing with Prince Chu. Later that night, once everyone had their fill of wine and food, the party gathered around a bonfire. This does feel like Chekhov's war bow. Yeah. Absolutely. The Xiande Emperor had not yet retired, so no one else could leave. Li Jianheng had long grown weary of sitting, but the Emperor showed no sign of retreating to his tent. What's going on? Li Jianheng cast a questioning glance at Xiao Chuya, who pretended not to notice. By now, the evening's entertainments had concluded, the singers and dancers were gone, and the bonfire was roaring. Unexpectedly, the Emperor gathered his robes around him and called out, "My dear Minister Hai." Hai Liangyi smoothed his robe and respectfully knelt before the Emperor. This aged subject is here. What was it that you wanted to ask today? Hai Liangyi kowtowed and replied, "This aged subject would like to recommend the Chief Supervising Secretary of the Office of Scrutiny for Revenue, Xue Xiu Zhuo, to be permitted to directly petition Your Majesty tonight." Sensing something afoot, Hua Siqian stroked his beard and said, "Why put it that way, Renshi? The Chief Supervising Secretary is already permitted to report directly to His Majesty." "That may be so," Hai Liangyi said, "but Xue Xiu Zhuo's memorials have repeatedly failed to reach the throne. What can he do but seek a direct audience?" "How is it possible that a memorial can't make its way to His Majesty?" Hua Siqian said. "We are curious about this too," the Xiande Emperor said. "My dear Minister Hai, call him up to say his piece." Pan Rugui exchanged looks with Hua Siqian. He strode forward and called out, "Summon the Chief Supervising Secretary of the Office of Scrutiny for Revenue, Xue Xiu Zhuo, for an audience with His Majesty." When Xue Xiu Zhuo appeared, he was not wearing his official's robe. He seemed travel-worn, as though he had just dismounted his horse. As he made his way forward, he looked only at the ground before him, finally kneeling to kowtow to the Xiande Emperor. "What do you have to report?" the Emperor asked over the sound of the wind. "This subject is the Supervising Secretary of the Office of Scrutiny," Xue Xiu Zhuo began. My key task is to audit the finances of the Ministry of Revenue in minute detail. In the 3rd month of the 5th year of Xiande, this subject audited the expenditure ledger for the 4th year of Xiande and discovered a subsidy of 2 million taels. The Ministry of Revenue recorded this sum as a subsidy to the 13 cities of Jueshi. Henry, I was struggling to read them, and I did it. I kept thinking, like, I'm gonna mess this up. Like, I guess it didn't show. I was struggling. Out of an abundance of prudence, this subject personally made a trip to Jueshi to verify the accounts. Together with the Provincial Administration Commissioner of Jueshi, Jiang Qingshan, this subject cross-referenced the accounts and discovered something quite strange. Out of the subsidy allocated in the 4th year of Xiande, only 1,530,000 taels had actually reached Jueshi. The remaining 470,000 taels had vanished without a trace. The discrepancies did not end there. In the 8th month of the same year, the Ministry of War disbursed salaries and provisions to the troops at our borders. The Ministry of Revenue allocated 2.8 million taels for this purpose. Of that amount, 1.8 million were meant for the 5 commanderies garrison troops in Qidong, and 1 million were meant for Li Bei. But by the time I traced that million back to Luoxia Pass, there were only 830,000 taels left. Your Majesty, this goes on, incident after incident. There is an enormous avenue of loss in the state treasury. Where did all this money go? Who took it? Even if Secretariat Elder Hua maintains his ignorance, this subject has the records to submit to His Majesty. Nonsense, Hua Siqian snapped. The Ministry of Revenue reconciles the accounts every year right in the palace. If there is such a dramatic loss, how is it that the Minister of Revenue, the Grand Secretariat, and the Director of Writ at the Directorate of Ceremonial Affairs all have no idea, and you're the only one who does? Hai Liangyi raised his head and said steadily, "This aged subject knows how. Since the 2nd year of Xiande, the account books the Ministry of Revenue submits have been split into real and sham copies. When it comes to deciding what is submitted each year, it is not the Minister of Revenue who decides. It is you, Hua Siqian." The crackle of the bonfire was like a thunderbolt, striking the assembly into silence. No one had expected such a stunt from the Xiande Emperor. Fine. Hua Siqian laughed in anger and rose from his seat, slamming his palms on the table. So we are fabricating wild charges now? You people speak of a Hua faction. There is no such thing. All under heaven belongs to the Emperor. I, Hua Siqian, have been open and above board in everything I have done. All along, I've placed His Majesty first. If there are any dubious accounts, bring them out now. Zheng Guoshi, tally it with him. The Minister of Revenue, Zheng Guoshi, knelt in a panic. Your Majesty, this subject begs to ask Chief Supervising Secretary Xue a question. If the accounts from the 4th year of Xiande are those at issue, why did he wait until today to bring it up? If there is a true problem, he has delayed the matter for years. Xue Xiuduo quickly returned fire. Nowadays, local officials who enter the capital do not meet their superiors nor pay respects to your Majesty. Instead, they send visitation cards and go first to the Hua Manor and Pan Gonggong's secondary manor to fawn and flatter. With so much power and influence in the hands of the Hua faction, who dares defy Secretariat Elder Hua? Hua Siqian was incensed. Every year, I tell the investigating censors to speak openly if there is a problem. What have I to fear? The Hua clan's ledgers have been presented to His Majesty. We've nothing to hide. He stared at Shui Xiuzhuo. Shui Yanqing, have you forgotten? Back in the years of Yongyi, who recommended you for the opportunity to enter Chudu as an official? You ought to respect me as half your teacher, but instead you frame me before the entire court. Shui Xiuzhuo raised his head and met Hua Siqian's eyes. There is no place in the court for teacher and pupil, only the sovereign and his ministers. Hua Siqian turned to the emperor. Does your majesty believe this slander? The emperor lowered his gaze and said, We believe the accounts. Hua Siqian threw his head back and laughed. He clapped his hands together. Excellent. Back then, when all of Chudu was in tumult, the late emperor chose you on his deathbed. Who here supported you, protected you, and guided you through that period of upheaval? Yet tonight, you would rather believe the words of this disloyal and unfilial scum? Lashes lowered. The emperor raised his teacup to his lips. When he finally looked at Hua Siqian, his eyes brimmed with loathing. Was it protection, or was it coercion? Who would know better than you? Jilei, Hua Siqian called out, shoving his table aside. Steel sang as the embroidered uniform guard drew their blades in unison. You would dare? Hai Liangyi cried. I wouldn't, Hua Siqian said, but you've pressed the blade to my throat. Surely you don't expect me to take it lying down. What do you want? The emperor said coldly. Shi Guan. Soldiers from the 8th Grade Battalion stepped swiftly forward to stand before the emperor. Take down Hua Siqian, the emperor commanded. Don't move, Hua Siqian bellowed. Shi Guan, your wife and child are having tea with the Empress Dowager as we speak. One more step, and it'll spell the end of the Shi clan lineage. The Empress Dowager has always treated you well. You have repeatedly let others lead you astray, but it's not too late to turn back. Shi Guan had been forced reluctantly into this position to begin with. Now he took a small step back, afraid. Not too late. The emperor's tone was venomous. Shi Guan, was it not too late for the former crown prince? Was it not too late for Shen Wei? Which of them was less loyal than you? They gave way, but did the Empress Dowager let them be? We have already drafted an imperial edict. As long as Prince Chu ascends the throne, the Shi clan's daughter will be empress. His Majesty has a nasty habit of reneging on his word. Do you dare harbor such outrageous ambitions? Hua Siqian snapped his sleeves. His Majesty's mind is addled with illness. Imperial concubine Wei is already half a month pregnant. How can Prince Chu possibly take the throne? Shi Guan gripped his blade. His forehead was sheened in sweat. Dark clouds shrouded the stars. The wind that had blown through the hunting grounds earlier, with the promise of rain, also ceased. Flags and banners drooped lifelessly in the stillness. No one moved. Shi Guan gritted his teeth. He drew his blade and turned to the emperor. With some difficulty, he said, His Majesty's illness is beyond cure. The emperor looked at Shi Guan and began to laugh. We gave you a chance, he said. The longer he laughed, the louder it grew. And the louder it grew, the more he coughed. At last he braced himself against the table and said frostily, If we did not have total confidence in our preparations, how could we flush out treacherous ministers and traitors like you? Qi Juyin is on her way now with her troops. She'll be here within 4 hours. So whom will you kill? Who dares? Jilei pipped up. Marshal Qi is far away in the Cangjun Commandery in Qidong. The embroidered uniform guard handles all incoming and outgoing correspondence with the garrisons. Your Majesty, it's time for you to wake up. The Emperor glared furiously at him. Panrugui hastily clamped a hand over the Emperor's mouth and forced him to sit. He smiled at the crowd. His Majesty is experiencing a relapse of his illness. The civil officials were trembling in their seats. Hua Siqian looked at Li Jianhong with a nasty smile. Prince Chu intends to stage a revolt at these hunting grounds. The evidence against him is conclusive. He even wields a bow. What are you waiting for? Kill him. Except for the guards who stood beside the prince, steel suddenly glittered all around the clearing as men drew their blades. Li Jianhong dropped his chopsticks in shock. He backed away, tumbling to the ground in his haste, his stool falling behind him. Secretariat Elder, I have no designs on the throne. Your Highness, Hua Siqian said, do you understand the words, out of one's hands? Thunder shook the sky. Li Jianhong could hear the swarm of approaching footsteps as he cowered among his personal guards. He said tearfully, barely able to stand without support, I'm only an idle prince. Why go this far? A blade flashed before him. Li Jianhong cried out and clutched his head in terror. Just before it struck, he heard the table overturn with a tremendous crash. Someone gripped the back of his collar and lifted him bodily off the ground. His Majesty bestowed the Conqueror Bow upon you, so you are the Crown Prince of Great Zhou. Xiao Chuya smiled grimly. You stand before the Supreme Commander of the Imperial Army. Who's so eager to meet their maker under my blade? Chen Yang, help the Crown Prince onto his horse. Xiao R. Jile slowly drew his own weapon. We've always been on friendly terms. Why are you wading into this tonight? Been fooling around too long. Xiao Chuya flung Li Jianhong at Chen Yang. I'm itching for a fight. Seize Argongzi, Jile ordered. Preserve his life, but break his arms and legs if you have to. Xiao Chuya shook off his cumbersome outer robe. Underneath, his clothes were fitted, designed for ease of movement. He swept a look around. If anyone is able to break my arm or leg, I'll not only award him 100 taels of gold, I'll kneel and call him master. Wolfsfang, that killing blade that had almost never left its sheath in Chudu, slid steadily out, its frosty glint blinding and deadly. But if he fails, he said, I will take his life. That's the end of the chapter. A lot just happened. Damn. I'm gonna definitely have to reread that later to, like, process everything that just happened, but I know that, Xiao Chia just stepped in like a badass, as he does. And there was, and does the being given the Conqueror Bow, that means that, like, Prince Chu is, like, officially the Crown Prince? Like, officially? Is that what that's what that means? So, like, that's who he is now. So the Emperor was kind of like, I've got to hurry up and give this to you, is what it sounds like. Xiao Chia, the most hottest of being hot in Danmei. Yes, agreed. So, it's time for me to take a 5 to 10 minute break. When we come back, We will be on page 233 for chapter 23, which is called Downpour. And I will try to be quick since we got so delayed by everything. So I will see y'all in just a moment. Hi, hello. I'm back. I'm back and I'm ready for more palace drama. We are on page 233 for chapter 23. Downpour. The last chapter was thunder, so this is downpour. Tell me if y'all can see and hear me, because my little preview is kind of, like, laggy for me sometimes. So I still see the be right back. I just want to make sure I'm, like, actually here. Hopefully. Yes. Okay, cool. Y'all can hear me. Awesome. Downpour. A gale battered the grass of the hunting grounds. The clang of weapons rang out as the flames of the bonfire leapt and crackled. The feast rapidly devolved into chaos. Hai Liang Yi climbed up from the ground, and with a burst of unexpected energy, slammed headlong into Pan Rugui. Castrated traitor, unhand my master. Li Jianheng had been pushed onto his horse and sat trembling as he watched cold steel flashing all around him. Clinging to the horse's neck, he closed his eyes and cried out, Tsa'an! Tsa'an, save me! Xiao Chuye sent Jile staggering with a kick. He didn't even turn as he put his blade through an embroidered uniform guard trying to sneak up behind him. Warm blood spattered his back. He freed his blade and took 2 steps forward to meet an 8th Grade Battalion soldier charging at him headlong. Xiao Chuye struck him to the ground with 1 blow. This is getting serious. Chen Yang had already leapt onto his own horse. He hauled Li Jianheng upright, let out a piercing whistle, and shouted to Prince Chu's guards, Follow me, protect His Highness, break through the siege from the east. As the horses shifted, Ji Lei commanded coldly, Stop them. Before he could finish, a blade came swinging down over his head. He brought up his own to block it. At once, his arms sank down nearly to his chest from the numbing force of Xiao Chuye's blow. Jile groaned and staggered under the impact. Astonished, he stared at the man before him. Xiao Er, you played us for fools. Jile took a wide stance and lifted his blade against the weight with shaking arms. He bellowed furiously. I misjudged you. A gust of wind at his side warned Xiao Chuye of an oncoming assault. He turned his head to dodge. He swept his blade in a diagonal arc, leaving a stream of blood glistening in its wake. Then Wolf's Fang collided with Jilei's sword once again. Snowcrest charged in, knocking over tables and dragging the tablecloth along as it galloped through the bonfire. The flames surged in its wake, setting the tents and withered grass alight. In a split second, Snowcrest rushed past him. Xiao Chuye flipped atop its back. He swatted the flank of Prince Chu's horse with the flat of his blade and growled, Go! Protect His Majesty! Xue Xiuzhuo rushed forward to pull Hai Liang Yi away from where he was tussling with Pan Rugui. Elder Hai, we must escort His Majesty away. The Xiande Emperor gasped for breath, lips and face pale. Xue Xiuzhuo hoisted the Emperor over his shoulder and fled the fire alongside the panicked civil officials. Xi Guan turned to give chase, but Hua Siqian pointed in the direction Prince Chu had ridden. His Majesty's fate is sealed. It matters not whether we kill him now, but Prince Chu must die tonight. If he slips through our fingers, you and I will be branded traitors. Jile, recall the embroidered uniform guard, and rally the 2,000 garrison troops in the city of Chuancheng. Surround the hunting grounds. Prince Chu must die. Xi Guan, hurry back to the capital. The 8 great battalions will guard Chudu. With the most urgent instructions issued, his usual calm returned. We have an imperial heir in our hands, and the Empress Dowager in command. As long as Chu Du remains stable, and Prince Chu is eliminated, not even Qi Juyin can do anything about it. As for the Xiao clan, let them run. There will be plenty of opportunities to deal with them in the future. The stench of blood on Xiao Chuye was thick. He pursed his lips against the smell. Any who blocked his path lost their heads to Wolf's Fang, regardless of their allegiance. Li Jianheng's stomach lurched, but he didn't dare puke now. He closed his mouth tight. The remaining 40 men with them were all Xiao Chuye's personal guards. His steed galloped swiftly beside Prince Chu's. Behind them, the embroidered uniform guard followed hot on their heels. Just as their group reached the edge of the forest, Xiao Chuye barked, "Scatter." The guards tore off their uniforms to reveal 40 riding outfits identical to Li Jianheng's. In unison, they turned their horses and charged into the forest in all directions. Dark clouds veiled the moon. No one could distinguish Prince Chu among them, especially at a distance. Jilei reined his horse to a halt at the edge of the trees and spat. "Surround the grounds. Search every inch of the forest. If you encounter Xiao R, do not engage him one-on-one. Form a team of at least 4 men and attack from all sides." The way they're like, he's like, we need at least 4 guys to take this guy down. He is too dangerous. Blue, the level of scheming and foresight from Xiao Chuye's part is so... Yeah, exactly. Branches whipped across Li Jianheng's face. The pain spurred him to raise an arm to shield himself. The guards had already dispersed, leaving only Xiao Chuye and Chen Yang riding beside him. "Get off." Xiao Chuye lifted Li Jianheng from the saddle and threw him to the ground. It was time for Chen Yang to take over. Li Jianheng was sent tumbling face first in the dirt. Sa'an, he whined. "What are you doing?" "Please follow me, Your Highness the Crown Prince." Chen Yang pulled Li Jianheng to his feet. "It's too conspicuous to travel through the forest on horseback. The embroidered uniform guard are experts at ambush and assassination. You're a live target atop a horse. We can't take the risk." "I won't go." Li Jianheng fearfully yanked his arm back and pleaded, "Sa'an, you're the only one who can protect me." "Knock him out. Get him out of here," Xiao Chuye commanded. Without waiting for Li Jianheng to reply, he turned and galloped deeper into the woods. Lightning flashed, its sharp light deepening the endless layers of ghostly shadows among the trees. The sounds of hooves, of drawn blades and racing footsteps rang out in succession. Only the sound of human voices was absent. The wet smell of the impending rainstorm hung on the breeze. Xiao Chuye didn't know how long he'd been riding when Snowcrest gradually came to a stop. Everything around him, suddenly, was still. The clouds at last broke open, raindrops pattering down before Xiao Chuye's eyes. Amid the downpour, a monstrous creature seemed to creep slowly out of the darkness. Countless embroidered uniform guards advanced through the trees toward Xiao Chuye, like a net of densely woven shadow. No one gave orders. The rain drummed on the ground. The sharp, curved edge of a Xiaochun saber sliced through the water, reaching Xiao Chuye's neck in the blink of an eye. In a single motion, Xiao Chuye bent his head, and Wolf's Fang left its sheath. The spine of his blade clanged against the Xiaochun saber. With an ear-piercing shriek, the saber cracked. Xiao Chuye slid Wolf's Fang back into its sheath and kicked out, sending the broken blade and its master tumbling into the rain. More swordsmen surged up, surrounding his horse. Xiao Chuye clapped his palm to Snowcrest's flank, leaping out of the saddle. Wolf's Fang again sprang from its sheath. This time, the glint of the blade swept in a flat arc, splitting skin and flesh in a ring around him. Blood splashed onto his face and trickled down his chin as he listened to the sound of human bodies collapsing. Xiao Chuye landed back in a crouch on the saddle, blade still half drawn. The sound of breathing, the patter of rain. In this pitch-dark night, one was as good as blindfolded. Xiao Chuye stretched his hearing to the maximum. Not one of the embroidered uniform guard who had been wounded earlier made a sound. Closely matched footsteps circled around him, too close, forming an unbreakable ring with him at the center. Whoever broke first would fatally expose his weakness. Xiao Chuye waited in silence. In this moment, Qiao Tianya, who was among those hiding in the darkness, truly realized what it meant to be called a lone wolf. Xiao Chuye was preternaturally calm, as if the more danger he faced, the more cool-headed and unpredictable he became. The blade he wielded was a set of fangs freshly bared. Wait, I just looked up at the chat. Henry, he landed in a crouch on the saddle. How did I forget that? I didn't register that's what he did. Like, he literally landed on the saddle, crouching on top of the horse. Is that... I guess I read that, and I guess I did not register what that meant. Qiao Tianya felt a rare sense of restlessness. They had been ordered to take Xiao Chuye alive, but when it came to a dangerous predator like this, it was far more difficult to trap and thwart him than it was to kill him. They would likely have only one chance to get close. If they could not take him down swiftly, this man would slaughter them. He closed his eyes. When he opened them again, they were sharp and merciless. He pulled out his own Xiaochun saber and stepped forward. The next moment, his figure was a blur as he burst into action, slashing down toward Xiao Chuye's back like lightning. Xiao Chuye swung his blade back to parry the blow, then spun to kick Qiao Tianya in the gut. The men on the other three sides fell upon him as one. He stopped their blade hands with one arm, exposing his left side. Someone seized the opening and sliced up toward his face. Xiao Chuye's elbow struck the flat of the saber, knocking it off course. He drove that elbow into the face of the man behind him, dropping him with a sharp blow. Qiao Tianya followed closely on his heels. The rain slashed down. There was no shouting, only the sound of blades. Rainwater had scrubbed away at Xiao Chuye's features until they looked still more ferocious. Trapped within this never-ending perimeter of steel, he maintained an acuity that was unique to him alone. Time and time again, in the darkness, he warded off the onslaught led by Qiao Tianya, as if treading on thin spring ice. Qiao Tianya pressed his offensive. These men were indeed experts at drawn-out siege. Was a lone wolf so terrifying? They had only to surround him and wear him down. Once he was tired, his patience and calm exhausted, he was bound to reveal weakness. Sure enough, Xiao Chuye's breathing gradually became labored under the intense flurry of blades. The downpour masked his view of the finer details around him. He never saw the crossbow being pulled out under the cover of darkness. The longer Xiao Chuye fought, the fiercer he grew. Blood flowed endlessly beneath his horse's hooves. But suddenly, Qiao Tianya waved his hand. The shadows surrounding him melted back into the night, plunging Xiao Chuye once again into silence and bringing the momentum he had gained to a screeching halt. Rainwater washed over the back of his hands. Xiao Chuye could no longer hear any footsteps. The heavy rain that drenched him was the only sound. Under him, Snowcrest anxiously stamped its hooves. Click. The sound of the crossbow trigger was soft, yet deafening in Xiao Chuye's ears. He slapped his horse, and Snowcrest lunged forward, but instead of riding to safety, he rolled off its back. There was a succession of thuds as a row of short arrows sank into the mud behind him. Xiao Chuye wiped the rain from his face, only to hear the twang of bowstrings from all directions. He jumped to his feet at once and started running. Footsteps followed him relentlessly. An arrow grazed Xiao Chuye's arm. He felt a numbing itch as blood oozed from the cut. Tranquilizer. They were herding him into capture like a wild beast. There was a narrow dip in the terrain ahead. Xiao Chuye sprang up with all his might and leapt the gap. He had just landed on his toes when he felt a sudden chill. With the momentum of his leap behind him, Xiao Chuye rolled forward to avoid the blade that hacked down into his footprints. That strike had been meant to kill. Before this new foe could extract his blade from the dirt, Xiao Chuye slipped behind him, shoved him down into the mud, and crushed his neck with a hand. A cluster of arrows nailed themselves into the tree trunk beside him. Before Xiao Chuye could rise, he was kicked in the back. Caught by surprise, he tumbled into the undergrowth, but after a split second to get his bearings, he braced a hand against the ground and readied himself to face his new assailant. When Xiao Chuye got a clear look at the man before him, he licked away the blood between his teeth and called... Sorry. I keep seeing a few words down, and I just... He licked away the blood between his teeth and called out to him, as though to a lover, "Oh, Lanzhou." I actually wasn't expecting this, because I'm a little... Maybe someone can help me. I have not been reading between the lines enough. I didn't know that Shen Zichuan was possibly called to... Well, I thought, oh, was he possibly called to try and kill Prince Chu? But to kill Xiao Chuye? Like, he's part of this? I don't really know what the Empress Dowager was asking him, so I'm completely taken off guard, and I don't know if that's just me. Shen Zichuan also had one hand on the ground. Thin blades were held between each of his fingers. He stared at Xiao Chuye through the rain, then pounced. Xiao Chuye's palm was already on the hilt of his blade, but Shen Zichuan got there first, knocking Wolf's Fang away with one hand and grabbing Xiao Chuye's collar with the other, flinging him to the ground. Mud splashed. Xiao Chuye hooked his arm around the back of Shen Zichuan's neck, fumbling a moment for Wolf's Fang, and slashing toward Shen Zichuan. Shen Zichuan immediately dropped down and came face to face with Xiao Chuye. The instant their eyes met, he swatted Wolf's Fang aside with the heel of his hand. Beads of blood from the edge of the blade splashed onto Shen Zichuan's face, where they slid along his jaw and mingled with the rain before dripping into the space between Xiao Chuye's brows. Or I guess Shen Zichuan just had to do this because he's part of the embroidered uniform guard? Question mark. The embroidered uniform guard closed in on them from behind. Shen Zichuan moved to rise, but Xiao Chuye slid his palm up Shen Zichuan's neck to press him down until they were close enough to hear each other's breath. Xiao Chuye was panting slightly. He whispered, Are you so desperate to court death with me? But Shen Zichuan bowed his head and murmured, not even a wolf can run once it's struck by the arrow. You've already slowed so much. How much longer can you go on? Xiao Chuye's fingers teasingly caressed the nape of Shen Zichuan's neck. His thumb slipped to the hollow of Shen Zichuan's throat and pressed firmly. I can still break a neck like this with no problem. A figure came rustling out of the underbrush. Without turning, Shen Zichuan raised his hand to fling a thin blade. The man crumpled. The murderous intent in Shen Zichuan's eyes had yet to fade, but he pushed away Xiao Chuye's wandering hand and dragged him along as they slid down another slope. Qiao Tianya came too late. By the time he arrived, all he found were the corpses of two strangers. He flipped them over for a look and plucked a thin blade from the throat of one of the dead men. This doesn't seem to belong to Xiao R. He narrowed his eyes. The second young master is the leash holding Li Bei in check. He must not die. Wasn't that the fucking consensus? So who has sent assassins? Well, that's the end of the chapter. I'm sorry that I know this is just par for the course for this book. I am kind of lost on, like, fully what's happening, on, like, Shen Zichuan's motivations, what part of the plan he is involved in, but I'm sure that's partly by design, hopefully. We are on page 243 for chapter 24, which is called Rainy Night. Y'all were saying earlier, should we turn this into a drinking game? I don't know what you wanted to turn into a drinking game, but I would like to propose every time the word nape, like the nape of his neck, every time that word comes up, we drink. Because that word has been popping up a lot. Xiao Chuye is protecting Prince Chu, and Shen Zichuan has a personal vendetta against him for that chess kick of old. Yes, he does. So, that makes sense. But the book doesn't want you to have too close a handle on Shen Zichuan's plans and motivations. Yeah, I can definitely see that. Wait, what was Henry's idea? The nape of the neck? Drink when the nape of the neck is mentioned? Was that it? Okay, good. Good to know. Thank you. Lightning flashed and thunder boomed. The rain came down like a curtain. Qiao Tianya straightened and handed the thin blade to the man behind him. Xiao R was hit by an arrow. He won't get far. At the bottom of the slope, Xiao Chuye and Shen Zichuan lay flat in the mud, catching their breath. Right this moment, not only were the embroidered uniform guard everywhere around them, there were also unknown assassins in the forest. Hiding from them would be harder than ascending to heaven. But breaking through the perimeter was even tougher. Their biggest problem was Xiao Chuye himself. His left arm, grazed by the arrow, had already gone numb. In another hour, the tranquilizing drug would spread through his body and paralyze him. Qiao Tianya nudged the trampled grass aside with the toe and spotted the mess of footprints. Without a word, he raised a hand and pointed down the slope. The embroidered uniform guard filed around him, crouching as they approached and surrounded the ditch. Xiao Chuye's body tensed as he listened to the sound of squelching footsteps getting closer and closer. He clutched the hilt of his blade. If someone jumped down, he would end them in a single blow. The Xiaochun's sabers had made their way over the edge of the slope. Xiao Chuye was about to jump up and fight when Shen Zichuan grabbed hold of his soaked robe. Chuye looked down and was met with Shen Zichuan's calm eyes. At that moment, several figures dropped down from the trees and engaged the embroidered uniform guard. By the time Chao Tianya saw the flash of flying blades and drew his saber, several guards had already collapsed to the ground. Seizing their advantage, the shadowy figures pounced. As chaos broke out above them, Shen Zichuan stowed his few remaining blades. He didn't need to say more. Xiao Chuye had already leapt to his feet. He climbed up the other side of the muddy slope and rolled into the thick grass. "Catch them," Chao Tianya bellowed. The embroidered uniform guards streamed after them. Xiao Chuye reached up and grasped a tree branch, swinging himself up. Below him, Shen Zichuan had only just reached the trunk when the guards behind him caught up. Like a tiger springing down the mountain, Xiao Chuye hacked viciously down at them with Wolf's Fang, forcing the guards back, then landed in a crouch on the ground. Chao Tianya sprang up from behind and swung his blade toward Xiao Chuye before he had a chance to retract Wolf's Fang. Xiao Chuye ducked his head just in time as, with a clang, the edge of Chao Tianya's saber collided with the sheath. Shen Zichuan pressed Wolf's Fang's sheath against Chao Tianya's blade. He stepped with one foot onto Xiao Chuye's back. His bulk lifted Shen Zichuan's whole body up to close in on Chao Tianya. The thin blade between the fingers of his other hand shot toward Chao Tianya's eyes. Chao Tianya made no attempt to dodge. The guards on either side of him swiftly brought down their blades to block the attack. Xiao Chuye sent Chao Tianya stumbling back with a kick square in the chest, and both parties retreated simultaneously. Chao Tianya flung droplets of blood off his blade. Shen Zichuan had sliced off a lock of hair on the judge's forehead. Xiao Chuye and Shen Zichuan took 2 steps back, then turned without a word and made a run for it. Chao Tianya stared at their backs. After them. East. Xiao Chuye reached out and dragged Shen Zichuan over. Shen Zichuan brushed aside stray branches as he ran. There's a man every 5 steps, and a squad every 10. Not to mention, there are still the Chuancheng garrison troops in the east. Xiao Chuye slowly retracted his hand, but stubbornly insisted, "The east is our way out." "We're done for." Shen Zichuan backhandedly tossed one of his blades, and the embroidered uniform guard lying in wait up a nearby tree crashed headfirst to the ground. Shen Zichuan drew the man's Xiaochun saber from its scabbard as he passed. Xiao Chuye grasped the hilt of his own blade in a reverse grip. The next moment, he sliced through the pitch-black night, blocking the attack of a man wielding 2 steel swords in the rain. He had already lost all sensation in his left arm. Even the fingers on his right hand were becoming stiff. This wasn't going to be easy. Shen Zichuan lopped the attacker's head off with the borrowed saber, then kicked the body aside. With his next stride, Xiao Chuye staggered, knocking his chest against Shen Zichuan's back and sending them both tumbling forward into the billowing waves of grass before rolling into a creek. The rain was still falling, and the freezing water rushed over them. Xiao Chuye's heavy breaths pressed down on the back of Shen Zichuan's neck as he lay face down in the water, producing a bizarre duality of scalding heat and piercing cold. "Killing me won't do you any good." Levering himself up as slightly with Wolf's Fang, Xiao Chuye said, "So I'm counting on you to take us the rest of the way." Shen Zichuan wiped the dirt and blood from his face with water from the creek. There's no point in saving you either. Xiao Qiye pinned him down again. You're looking for Prince Chu. What are you going to do now? The embroidered uniform guard will never flush him out. I'm the only one who knows where he is. You've already missed your opportunity. The Empress Dowager will fail tonight. Treat me well, and I could be your ticket out of here. Shen Zichuan glanced over his shoulder. The two faced each other, with the tips of their noses barely touching. I'll hack you to death, he said coolly. Then we'll die together. You expended so much effort to free yourself from that temple, just to die with me in the name of love? Why don't you use that smart mouth to chat with Qiao Tianya? Shen Zichuan grasped Xiao Qiye's blade hand with icy fingers. The next instant, Wolf's Fang swept back and momentarily beat back their pursuers. Shen Zichuan seized the opening to knee Xiao Qiye aside. He held the Shuichun saber in one hand and grabbed Wolf's Fang with the other, taking deep, steadying breaths. Put that life of yours on your tab, he said. Watching Qiao Tianya run toward them, Shen Zichuan tightened his grip on both hilts. After tonight, I own you. A snow-white flash cut through the inky night. Shen Zichuan gave Qiao Tianya no chance to speak, but slashed at him head-on. He sent up a spray of water with every step. Each of Shen Zichuan's blows was deadly. As blade met blade, chips formed on the edge of his borrowed Shuichun saber. At last, Qiao Tianya parried it with a sharp sweep of his own and sent it flying. The two men sprang apart. Shen Zichuan sank his empty left hand into the creek, washing away the blood that had trickled down. A porcelain beauty like yourself should sit safely behind a curtain on the high dais of a pavilion. Qiao Tianya looked as though he had caught a whiff of copper on the wind. Carrying a blade will hurt your hands. What if you snap them right off? Shen Zichuan weighed Wolf's Fang with his right hand. Without my arms and legs, perhaps I'll be more compliant. There's a type of person in this world one should never provoke, Qiao Tianya said. It's those who are ruthless even to themselves, people like you. Shen Zichuan lunged forward to attack. Wolf's Fang was so heavy in his hands as to be unwieldy, but its weight also had an advantage. With its added heft, the power of his G-style blade kept Qiao Tianya too occupied to counteract his blows. The force of his attack had Qiao Tianya nearly bent over backward as he retreated. As he drew nearer the creek, he had a terrible sense of foreboding. Sure enough, Shen Zichuan's injured left hand suddenly splashed up from the water. Mud splattered into Qiao Tianya's eyes. In this crucial moment of weakness, Shen Zichuan delivered yet another heavy blow as he kicked Qiao Tianya and sent him crashing down into the water. More guards would arrive any second. Shen Zichuan took several steps back, eager to end the engagement. Unfortunately, Xiao Qiye was so tall, and with such long legs, Shen Zichuan could hardly lift him. He started half-dragging Xiao Qiye away. Long legs mention. Yep. The search intensified, yet time seemed to slow to a crawl. All the guard managed to find in the forest were Xiao Qiye's decoys. They were every one of them well-trained suicide agents. Once they fell into the embroidered uniform guards' hands, they took their own lives by biting off their tongues, denying Jilei any chance at interrogation. Where exactly was Prince Chu? Only Xiao Qiye knew. That little bastard. Driven mad with frustration, Jilei rose to his feet to survey his surroundings. Get the Chuancheng garrison troops to search along the edge of the hunting grounds. Shen Zichuan climbed out of the water, dragging Xiao Qiye out after him, but the creek bed was too steep. In the end, he bit down on Xiao Qiye's back collar and hauled with all his might to drag the man the last few feet. The cut on Shen Zichuan's left hand bled incessantly. He tore a strip off his robe, rinsed it in the creek, and clumsily bound the wound. There's a handkerchief in my lapels, Xiao Qiye said, leaning across a moss-covered rock. Shen Zichuan reached in, fished a sodden handkerchief from inside Xiao Qiye's robe, and squeezed the muddy water onto Xiao Qiye's chest. When will the effects of this drug pass? Xiao Qiye asked. 2 hours or so. Soon. Crouching in a tree is better than lying in a creek. Shen Zichuan was soaked through. Xiao Qiye could see where the back of his collar gaped open, revealing specks of dark mud on his pale neck. The contrast was very... ... The embroidered uniform guard has offices for training beasts. Animals can smell the scent of blood. As Shen Zichuan spoke, he lowered his head and sniffed lightly at fingertips that had been tainted with red. Very seductive. Xiao Qiye watched him. What sorcery was this? Only a moment ago, this man was killing people with a blade. And even now, nothing about his actions was like a woman. So why had Xiao Qiye thought such a thing? It must have been Li Jianheng's influence. Day in and day out, the prince had gone on about Shen Zichuan's beauty, until even Xiao Qiye himself had come to think and see the man this way, like those old men in Chudu, with their unusual predilections. He's been having his awakening, but it's very clear now. Your swordsmanship's not bad. Xiao Qiye's gaze was so intense, it could have peeled back Shen Zichuan's collar. You must have trained hard in the temple. And yet, it's impossible to tell from your physique. Did you use some kind of medicine? Shen Zichuan looked sidelong at him. Noting the direction of Xiao Qiye's gaze, he raised a hand to the back of his neck. How many times a day do you have to look at it? Are you that obsessed? Xiao Qiye savored the residual taste of blood on the tip of his tongue. When you put it like that, it's so suggestive. You make it sound like I'm some pervert. Shen Zichuan reached over and covered Xiao Qiye's face with the dirty handkerchief. I thought you indulged in powders and perfume. I didn't expect you to have a taste for men and women both. What's with the flirting? Xiao Qiye said. Our Gongza only wants you to wipe the mud off your neck. You want me to wipe it? With the handkerchief between them, Shen Zichuan's fingertips stopped between Xiao Qiye's brows. Or you want to wipe it for me? Icy rain trickled down his finger and dripped between Xiao Qiye's brows. As if they had fully absorbed Shen Zichuan's allure, the droplets that seeped into Xiao Qiye's collar blossomed into ripples of temptation. He was overcome with a restless itch. Xiao Qiye wanted very much to drink some water. At the same time, he wanted Shen Zichuan to stay a little farther away from him. After a moment of silence, he laughed. You really are something. You think too much. Shen Zichuan gathered his collar tighter, hugged Xiao Chuye's blade to his chest, and spoke no further. The rain gradually slowed. The barking of hounds rang out from somewhere deeper in the woods. Neither man moved. The rock they huddled against jutted out over the side of the creek's steep bank, with shrubs overhanging it from above. It was a small and narrow hiding place, just large enough for one man, and Xiao Chuye was already in it. Waiting, Xiao Chuye listened as a guard leading a hound closed in on them. Shen Zichuan wedged Wolf's Fang into a crevice above them and crept up the bank to climb his way into the small space beneath the rock. Xiao Chuye felt a weight on his body as the man inched up his legs to his chest. Pressed tightly, the two men managed to squeeze together into the narrow space. Xiao Chuye could feel the heat of their thighs rubbing against each other as Shen Zichuan straddled him. He could feel Shen Zichuan's breath by his temple as he leaned in close. With his eyes still covered by the handkerchief, Xiao Chuye was free to visualize Shen Zichuan's current pose. He couldn't shake off the image of that lotus-white neck. "I beg of you," Xiao Chuye sighed, "sit on my stomach. Don't sit down there." Oh my god. Okay, wait. There's art. There's art now. I didn't know this is where we were going this stream. Shen Zichuan didn't move. The rustling from above was getting closer. Xiao Chuye tried to calm his breathing, but if he raised his head an inch, he would touch Shen Zichuan's chin, and if he bowed his head an inch, the tip of his nose would graze the curve of that neck. Shen Zichuan had been listening for movements above. Now, he suddenly lifted the handkerchief off Xiao Chuye's face and eyed him wordlessly. Xiao Chuye looked back at Shen Zichuan. He didn't know if the scent of blood had gone to his head tonight, or what kind of madness this was. In any case, something hot and hard was pressing up against Shen Zichuan, making both of them uncomfortable. Their clothes, soaked by rain, clung so close to their skin, it was almost as if there was nothing between them at all. As if the slightest movement would constitute the spark that lit a fire. Above them, the hounds were hunting. And that's the end of the chapter. It's not that it feels sudden that they would get into this kind of situation. It's that, well, like I'm not surprised that they're here per se, but it's still just like, first off, so much plot happened, and so it's the fact that, like, oh, the plot happened and it put them in this situation, and that is what feels sudden. Like, I'm just like, we're in a situation TM, like, already. So I was supposed to read, oh god, okay, wait. I was supposed to read chapter 25 today. The thing is, I'm either gonna have to go over in this stream or I'm gonna have to go over in another stream to make up for it at some point, because we got so delayed today. So my question is, should I go ahead and read chapter 25 now? Because it's 4:58. I can do that, yeah. I think it's a pretty short chapter, so I think I'm gonna go ahead and do that. So we are on page 253 for chapter 25, which is called Daybreak. Feet trampled the undergrowth, and the hound, as though it had caught a scent, nosed aside branches and leaves as it pawed at the earth just over their heads. Dirt rained down on Shen Zichuan's neck. Movement in any direction was out of the question, so he could only remain frozen in place. Xiao Qie felt increasingly uncomfortable. This position made it impossible for him to settle. He remained in constant contact with that delicate firmness, as if the man astride him was not human at all, but a cloud bank, enveloping him like mist, ubiquitous and pervasive. This atmosphere lit a fire in him. He hadn't satisfied himself in far too long, and was still so hard that all he could think about was being in a tub of ice alone immediately. Meanwhile, the people are searching for them up above. This man has priorities. Raindrops pattered against the ground, soaking through the brush and drenching his hair. As they lay locked in this endless stalemate, Xiao Qie finally regained some feeling in his arms. His fingers twitched as the nerves awoke. The hunter above them finally moved away, but Shen Zichuan didn't relax. Pressing up against each other in this precarious crevice now became a different kind of danger. Xiao Qie did not avert his gaze. He must not look away. If he appeared the least bit evasive, it would seem as though he really had a thing for Shen Zichuan. "You're way too close to me," Xiao Qie said nonchalantly. Shen Zichuan did not reply. For the first time, Xiao Qie understood the meaning of the saying, "He who rides a tiger finds it difficult to dismount." He wanted to raise his head and gasp for air, but he didn't dare. Doing so would make him look even more like an impatient pervert. He swore he had no such intentions. It was just that they were too close. Bewitched by the exquisite friction of their bodies and Shen Zichuan's distinctive scent, his body merely submitted to his base desires. Merely. Xiao Qie felt Shen Zichuan slide down his chest. The instant he peeled himself away, Xiao Qie breathed a small sigh, as if he had been relieved of an unsupportable burden. But before the breath had fully escaped him, his collar tightened around his neck, and he was hurled headfirst toward the creek, chest scraping the moss. He reached back and grabbed hold of Shen Zichuan's wrist, hooking a foot around Shen Zichuan's ankle to trip him. They splashed into the creek together. Xiao Qie rolled them over, took Shen Zichuan's wrists in either hand, and pinned the man heavily under his body. Romantic problems should be solved in a romantic way. Xiao Qie refused to let Shen Zichuan move. "Why raise your hand to me?" All 10 of Shen Zichuan's fingers were splayed, his hair scattered in the water. He gasped for breath, his chin slightly raised. A grim smile tugged at the corners of his lips as he said, "Forcing yourself on others is not a smart thing to do." "I have no such intentions," Xiao Qie hissed, grinding every word to pieces between his teeth. Shen Zichuan pressed his knee to Xiao Qie's groin and looked at him meaningfully. Xiao Qie answered him with a long, suffering look. Then he hung his head and shook his dripping hair like a dog, sending droplets splattering across Shen Zichuan's face. Without waiting for Shen Zichuan to react, he rubbed the back of Shen Zichuan's neck ruthlessly in the water until that maddening bit of mud was washed clean. When he was satisfied, he drew Shen Zichuan's collar closed and fastened it securely. "The night is wet and cold. Xiao Chuye released Shen Zichuan and climbed off him. Cover up. He dunked his head into the water without giving Shen Zichuan a chance to reply. When he surfaced again, he'd mostly calmed down. Wiping water off his face, Xiao Chuye's eyes became clearer, sharper. It's almost dawn. Let's go, he said, and took up his sword. Henry. The night is wet, is it? Henry, yeah, the jokes aside, that moment kind of hurt. Shen Zichuan must have been at least a little scared. Reminds me of Laurent. I can see it, yeah. There is a scene break. Jilei was increasingly agitated. Dawn glimmered on the horizon, yet the hunt had turned up nothing. Chao Tianya peeled away the collar of one of the suicide soldiers, but found nothing that identified them. These men belonged to Xiao Er. He squatted down and pondered. In Chudu, his every move is under watch. When did he find the time to train a suicide guard? We must find him now. Jilei looked to the northwest, where Chudu lay. The 8 great battalions should already control the city gates. We can't lose our heads now. Jilei's hand had not once left his blade. Watching him, Chao Tianya felt he was restless, not merely because Xiao Chuye and Prince Chu eluded them, but for some other reason. Xiao Er is our lifeline if we want to keep Li Bei at bay. Chao Tianya maintained his composure and watched Jilei. Yet there are assassins in the woods tonight. Does your excellency know anything about this? The Xiao clan has offended quite a few people. It seems one of them wants to fish in troubled waters. Jilei turned to stare at Chao Tianya. How would I know who it is? Chao Tianya spread his hands helplessly. The fact is, we can't find Xiao Er. He must have come prepared. That's why he slipped through our fingers all night. He's had us running circles for hours, and it's almost dawn. I'd say we have fallen into his trap. Fallen into his trap? Jilei furrowed his brow. I'm afraid he's used himself as bait to buy time. Chao Tianya stood and looked out over the distant grassland. If I had to wager, I'd say he has reinforcements. The troops on all 4 borders are accounted for. Where are these reinforcements coming from? Chao Tianya didn't answer. He couldn't begin to guess. Shi Guan rode hard back to the capital. As he entered the city gates, he was greeted by a pervasive silence. Instantly suspicious, he drew his blade and turned to his deputy. Has there been anything odd in Chudu tonight? Even the deputy general who had come to lead Shi Guan's horse could see he was nervous. No, nothing out of the ordinary. Gather the men, Shi Guan ordered. Other than those guarding the city gates, everyone else follows me to surround and defend the palace. With that, he spurred his horse toward the palace. His wife and son were still within, and while the danger lasted, there was no way the Empress Dowager would let him anywhere close. On pain of death, he had to ensure the Empress Dowager's safety. The deputy general went to mobilize his men as ordered. But as he led the patrol squad out, his path was blocked by a group of drunk men from the Imperial Army. The 8 great battalions had always looked down on Chudu's errand boys. From atop his horse, he snapped his riding crop and barked, "Scram!" The vice commander of the Imperial Army was a man with a vicious blade scar marring his face. After taking the lash from the crop, he unexpectedly grinned and dropped to the ground nearly under the horse's hooves, rolling in the dirt and shouting, "We are both military men. I'm higher ranked than you. Why did you strike me? How dare you?" The deputy general scoffed. Low-life pests sponging off the Imperial coffers. Scram. Don't hold up the 8 great battalions on important business. The man rose to his feet in a single fluid move and sneered up at the Deputy General. Important business. Showing the Imperial Army a good time is your business tonight. His words were still ringing when the Imperial Army, who had by all accounts been 3 sheets to the wind, drew their swords in unison. By the time the Deputy General reined his horse in shock, the line of men behind him were crumpling to the ground, their throats slit. "Is this a revolt?" the Deputy General cried. "The 8 great battalions." A blade flashed before him, and he toppled from his horse, his blood painting the ground. The vice commander kicked the Deputy General's head aside and wiped his blade clean on the dead man's chest. "In your fucking dreams." His voice was steady. "The tides have turned. It's time for the Imperial Army to piss on your heads." Faint white light bled over the horizon. Dawn was fast approaching. Qiao Tianya gulped some water and tossed the water skin to the man behind him. He wiped his mouth and commanded, "Keep searching." But as he strode forward, something fell into place. He turned his head and carefully sized up his subordinates. Where could Prince Chu be hiding? There was no way he could have escaped the hunting grounds, so why couldn't they find him? The embroidered uniform guard had been pursuing Prince Chu all night. Was it possible that the one they sought had been among them the whole time? Qiao Tianya instantly gave the order. Verify everyone's authority tokens. All guards on the duty roster tonight must be accounted for. Start checking now. As the vice commander walked the lines, the guards removed their tokens of authority and presented them. The vice commander checked the token and swept a glance over the man it belonged to, matching each name to a face. Relying on his keen memory, he checked one by one until he came to the very end of the line. Token. He looked up and studied the guard before him with eyes like an eagle. Hand it over. The man slid his token onto the tray. The guard beside him began to tremble. He ducked his head, not daring to raise it. The vice commander seemed not to notice. He lifted his brush to make a tick in his book and said, "Which office?" "The swords office," Chen Yang replied. "I've never seen you on a mission before," the vice commander said. "First time?" Li Jianheng was trembling badly. Chen Yang knew it was only a matter of time until they were caught. Still, he remained unruffled. "Strangers at first meeting, friends at second. You'll find me a familiar enough face after a few more missions." The vice commander pointed his brush toward Li Jianheng. Token. Even after a few attempts, Li Jianheng's fumbling fingers hadn't managed to remove the token from his belt. The vice commander smiled and reached out to remove it for him. Chen Yang tensed. Unfortunately, Li Jianheng seemed to have lost his nerve. The instant the vice commander moved toward him, the prince flinched back and cried, "Don't hurt me." "Shit." At that moment, they heard a shrill whistle, and a black horse with a snowy white chest thundered out of the forest, a troop of cavalry close behind. As dawn broke over the trees, the Ger-Falcon led the way, wheeling toward them. Hearing the commotion, Hua Siqian turned to see men and horses charging across the grass. The 8 great battalions. But these men bore no insignia on their armor. They didn't even carry banners. Chen Yang immediately took hold of Prince Chu and called out, "His Highness the Crowned Prince is under protection of the Imperial Army. All who bear swords before him shall be slain without exception. Stand aside." Hua Siqian took a few stumbling steps forward in disbelief. He looked back at the ranks of the embroidered uniform guard and shouted. Prince Chu was held hostage by traitors. What are you waiting for? Chao Tianya lunged toward the prince. Cornered, with nowhere to retreat, Li Jianheng couldn't help but scream. A long blade suddenly shot out of the woods and buried itself in the ground before Li Jianheng's feet. Xiao Chuye leapt down from his horse, tore off his token, and threw it onto the tray. Our main forces are on their way. Who has the guts to make a move? He growled. Ji Lei, too, had just reached the clearing on horseback. Encountering the scene, he bellowed, "What a load of horseshit! The Imperial Army is..." The Ger-Falcon landed on Xiao Chuye's shoulder. He stroked the raptor approvingly. "Give it a try, Laoji, if you have the balls." Ji Lei looked toward the grassland. The vanguard of the Imperial Army was already here, yet the mass of mounted soldiers behind them seemed to stretch without end. Then the Cangjun commandery banners of Qidong unfurled. He saw that the one at the head of these galloping horses was none other than Qi Juyin herself. Hua Siqian retreated several steps. He gripped Pan Rugui as he said in a hoarse voice, "The message to Qidong was intercepted. How could they secretly..." Xiao Chuye sheathed his sword. If all written communication in Chudu had to pass through the hands of the embroidered uniform guard, how troublesome would that be? The situation was beyond salvation. Hua Siqian sank to the ground and murmured, "The Empress Dowager is still in the palace." The Empress Dowager is advanced in years. In order to attend to her health, she has handed all matters pertaining to the patrol and defense of the capital to the Imperial Army. Xiao Chuye, disheveled from hours of fighting, now pulled the tidy Li Jianheng to his feet. "Your Highness..." Oh, I lost my page. "Your Highness has been on the move all night. It can't have been easy on you." Qi Juyin's horse had cut through the crowd. Now she dismounted and knelt to Li Jianheng to make her obeisance, her voice ringing clear through the hunting grounds. "Rest assured, Your Highness, the 200,000 men and horses of Qidong stand at the ready. This subject, Qi Juyin, swears to ensure the safety of Your Highness the Crown Prince." As if in a dream, Li Jianheng looked blankly at Qi Juyin, then to his left and right. Chao Tianya was the most astute of his companions. Seeing the writing on the wall, he knelt at once. The moment he did, the embroidered uniform guard around him threw down their blades and knelt one after another. "I..." Li Jianheng clenched his empty palms as though clutching at a lifeline. He was weeping with joy, the tears in his eyes spilling down his cheeks as he struggled to speak. "Now that I'm the Crown Prince, I'll surely reward the great kindness everyone has done me today." And that's the end of the chapter. So that's where we end today. Well, that was exhilarating. We got a lot. There was a lot of plot, a lot of flirting, a totally unexpected, accidental boner moment. And with, art and everything. That was great. Thank y'all for being here. I'm sorry it was such a mess at the beginning. I'm gonna be yelling at my internet soon. So, yeah, wow. I have to go. Thank you for being here. I will see you all on Wednesday. Very exciting. You'll have a good one. Bye.